everyone, and welcome back to the United Star. We've got John Silk back for you, the author of Even the Defeats, and he was on the channel previously talking about his fantastic book. Do check that video out, do check his book out. And today we've got him here to talk about probably the most important game of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's tenure, the Europa League final against Villarreal. John, this game is not easy, is it?
No, it's not. But if I could have chosen an opponent, I didn't really want to play an English team. So once I saw Spurs go out, and then obviously Arsenal at the semi-final stage, um, listen, Villarreal are going to pose a challenge, especially under Unai Emery, and we know what his pedigree is like in this tournament. I'm not taking anything for granted. I mean, they pushed Real Madrid at the weekend in La Liga. They have a European pedigree as well. I mean, in my lifetime, in fact, since the year 2000, they were in the semi-finals of the Champions League when they lost to Arsenal. So they're not, this is the club of, of certain players. Of course, Rossi, who played for United, also played for Villarreal. So they're not, they're no mugs. We're not going to be complacent, but considering the potential opponents and considering the teams that we've knocked out en route, Roma, Milan, etc. Why can't we win and really feel confident? I guess the lack of a trophy under Solskjaer, and obviously since 2017, plays its role. It's a one-off game, neutral venue, certain things going on. But I also think we had the weekend off, so to speak. I know we had the game against Wolves, but Villarreal were still sort of playing a closer to full strength lineup in terms of their position in the Spanish league was a bit nearer the top, but less secure, if you like. So I'm confident. Right now, I don't feel too anxious, but that might change as it gets nearer kickoff and the doubts, of course, come seeping in.
No, I think John, you've hit the nail on the head. I think since quite a few rounds, you could say that we are the best squad in the Europa League.
Yeah.
If you could put it in that in a way, we could say that we were probably the only squad left in the Europa League for the last after I think we knocked Sociedad out that deserved to be in the Champions League but were in the Europa League. So I think if you put it that way, I think we are definitely a better squad than Villarreal. But then, like you said, Unai Emery is he's a genius, isn't he? When it comes to winning the Europa League, he's only never done it with Arsenal before, and it's actually incredible how many times he's managed to win this competition. And the other thing is that obviously there's a trophy on the line, but for Villarreal, there's also Champions League football on the line. They weren't able to make it on the last day of La Liga through the traditional route, so
Yeah.
they have. You may say a little more to play for. I mean, I don't want to say our players aren't going to be up for it, but they might be a little more hungrier because they know that they can get into the Champions League this way, whereas we are a lot more secured. But I personally believe our team is much better than Villarreal's, and we should go out there and get the job done. But now the real question is, did I believe this before Maguire got injured? Is it still the case after we don't have easily our best defender and captain? Do you think Harry Maguire will A, play, which is unlikely, but B, how much of an impact will that be on Manchester United?
Yeah. Actually, I'm just going to address quickly something you mentioned there about the Champions League qualification being on the line. I think you're right. That might make a tiny, tiny, tiny difference in terms of the motivation of the two teams. I thought it would make a big impact or a bigger impact a couple of years ago when it was Chelsea versus Arsenal in the final. And going into that final, Chelsea had already secured Champions League qualification and Arsenal needed it. So I actually thought that might swing things in their favor. But that didn't pan out that way at all. I mean, there was such a chasm between the two teams that day. But bringing it obviously towards what you were saying about Maguire, I don't think he will play. I've never seen a player have their foot in a leg brace or a boot as it was 7 days ago. When we played against Fulham, who's in the stands, obviously for that game, and his foot was still in the brace, so to speak, or in the boot, the special boot for the injury. I don't recall anybody having that. I remember Wayne Rooney having a situation about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, when he did have it, and then he did come back and rush back against Bayern. It was a bit of a slightly different situation. I think we desperately needed him, and his foot was in a boot, but that was immediately after the injury. What we got with Maguire is 2 weeks, 3 weeks after his injury, his foot is still in that, that protective, that protective seal, so to speak. So no, I don't see him playing tomorrow. Despite his unbelievable powers of recovery and of his strength that he's shown throughout the 2 years since he's been at the club, hardly missing a minute. In fact, I don't think he had missed a minute this season until he came off injured against Villa. So, no, I don't think he'll play. When it comes to your second point, how much will we miss him? Yeah, we will. Um, I feel more secure with him and Lindelof at the back. I think if it was him and Bailly, perhaps as well, I would feel slightly secure. But I think when we played Spurs at home, I certainly know Bailly started that game. And I think it was a Bailly. No, Maguire played. Sorry. So, but the point is this: he is probably the most important one of the two centre backs that we have with him and Lindelof. So I think he will be missed. Um, yeah, his organisation, his leadership, we all know about that. But his ability as well on the ball, I don't think is that bad. What he lacks in pace, he sometimes makes up for in thought as well. So I think, yeah, he's going to be missed. And if we do lose, we'll probably be shipping 1 or 2 goals and we'll be thinking, my goodness, I wish we had Harry Maguire there. However, we still should have enough to overcome this tricky hurdle, if you like, and ultimately seal our first trophy since 2017, which, of course, was also the Europa League.
Europa League, of course. It was a couple of days ago only that we won it. But John, this is the thing then. If Maguire, which I think you're completely right in saying that he's not going to play unless there's some sort of Diego Costa kind of situation where he starts and is pulled off in about 10-15 minutes, which by the way may not be the worst thing since there are 5 substitutions. But
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
but John, if he doesn't start, do you go with Lindelof and Bailly or do you go with Twanzebe and Lindelof? Because I think Lindelof is definitely going to play a part in the game. It's between the other one centre back. Who are you more confident with, or who are you more sort of certain of starting as well?
I think if this question was posed 3 or 4 months ago, we would have all said Bailly without a shadow of a doubt. I think the doubts have crept in, partly because of 1 or 2 performances that Bailly's put in of late, against Leicester and Liverpool. Tuanzebe probably looked the slightly better centre half, and maybe even against Wolves as well on Sunday. So I think that gap has closed, if you like, between those two. Probably more through Bailly's kind of indecisiveness rather than any performances from Tuanzebe, amazing performances from him. So I would still be erring towards Bailly, though. I think the experience. I think one of the things with Bailly as well, when he first comes back from an injury, or when he first comes back into the team after a period out, he is maybe slightly more error prone. Once he's had 2-3 weeks, if you like, back in the team, those errors do go down somewhat. And I do think, obviously, with Maguire's injury, being somewhat, just over 3 weeks ago now, having played quite a few games in recent weeks, I think he's now got the fitness and hopefully the form to show that he's the deserving partner. I like Tuanzebe, and of course, the thing in Tuanzebe's favor, if you like, are his performances against PSG that we remember in Paris in recent years, where he's come in and he's performed great against top class opponents, better than the ones he'll be facing or potentially facing tomorrow in obviously Neymar and Mbappe, etc. So that's in his favor, but I personally still think in so many respects, Bailly is the third best centre half at the club, and he's also got the experience, if you like. So I'm going for Bailly personally, and fingers crossed it'll be enough. One of the things I have with Bailly, though, is apart from some sort of unusual, actions on the pitch in terms of the way he plays, is obviously his ability on the ball. But hopefully, Lindelof will be the one who'll take the responsibility there. We'll also, I guess, we'll be playing with McFred as well as the two sort of sitting midfielders. We'll come to the lineup in a minute, I'm sure. So I just think that probably also kind of goes in his favor in a way, so it gives us kind of four players, three of which can potentially, use the ball with McTominay and Fred, as well as Lindelof. And yeah, I think we should be okay-ish in terms of protection.
See, John, I think I'm going to differ with you slightly because, in my view, I think Eric Bailly is what I say is a circus defender because you never know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He's going to jump awkwardly and land awkwardly. He's going to take someone's feet off. But there is another possibility where he might have an absolutely phenomenal game. The problem, though, is that we could be down to 10 men in 15 minutes with Eric Bailly playing, and I don't think that we can risk that in a final. While I agree with you, he's got experience, but I don't think that experience has brought him any sort of uh, advanced football understanding, so to speak.
I love your definition, a circus defender. Because I know exactly what you mean. I mean, for a couple of months this season, I think he lost that reputation in January, February when he was in the team. But I know what you mean. My heart is in my mouth sometimes when he's doing stuff, and sometimes it's good stuff. But yeah, sometimes it's risky.
Yeah, it's like his hands and his legs are going everywhere. And I mean, if you remember that semi final that we lost to Chelsea, the way he jumped, I know he got injured and that was bad, but the way he jumps and lands, no one else lands like that. There's just something about him. He's just too erratic. Like he's wanting to do things that he shouldn't be doing. And that's why I feel Zebi should start. He's had a couple of good games. And I don't know. I just feel more comfortable. I feel like Bayi is just a red card risk, and he's waiting to happen. He's just going to give away a penalty. He's going to get a red card, and we know De Gea doesn't save penalties.
That Chelsea game is an interesting point that you mentioned. Obviously, in a semi-final last year, I don't recall since then starting with three at the back. We might have done, but if we did, it wasn't in a serious game. Although I'm actually starting to think that maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks since the league obviously was gone, maybe this was the time to try it. Maybe there wasn't quite enough games to do so, but perhaps a back three of Tuanzebe and Bailly and Lindelof, or even maybe Wan-Bissaka was one of the three. So I think we can pretty much dismiss that possibility for tomorrow, given that he hasn't played it really in the last year. But he did start with a three at the back in that game against Chelsea.
Yeah.
And I don't really recall him doing it much since then.
Yeah. But so John, let's lead into that. What do you think is our strongest first 11? Or actually, what do you think Ollie is going to put out tomorrow, come the final?
Yeah, I was just making a quick note actually on that. I actually think that my 11 and Ollie's 11 will be the same. That's not always the case. Sometimes we say, I think this is what I would prefer, but I think Ollie will go with this. But actually, I think our 11s are going to mirror each other. And that's simply this. David De Gea in goal. I think Henderson has emerged as our number one in recent months, if you like, since De Gea went back to Spain to have his child. And Henderson is, rightly the number one, although I'm still not convinced about the goalkeeping situation, but that's a debate for another day. However, De Gea starts tomorrow. He's the Europa League goalkeeper. There's not much between the two in terms of, of who should start anyway, but absolutely right that you stick with him, especially after the service he's given us. And it could be his last game. I hope not in many respects. And I know he's dropped made a few mistakes. And I remember watching a video just the other day about, the decline of David De Gea. And I think that's unquestionable. However, he starts tomorrow in my lineup and also in Ollie's, no doubt about that. Wan-Bissaka and Shaw, no brainer at the fullback positions. We're going to play four at the back, as I said, and Ollie will definitely go with that. I will go with Bailly and Lindelof, and I think Ollie will do the same. But that's probably my biggest doubt about what I will do, but also what Ollie would do. But that would be my back four. I'm guessing your back four would be Tuanzebe and Lindelof, yeah. And I wouldn't, if Ollie went for Tuanzebe, I'm not going to be, up in the air wondering what on earth's going on. It really is a close call between the two.
Yeah.
But I'm erring just towards Bailly. So yeah, that's my and I say my team and Ollie's team is the same. So I'm going to go with McFred as the two sort of sitting midfielders, if you like. I don't think it's really a time to start thinking about playing one of the two, if you like, or Matic in there. Matic hasn't really fulfilled the role as a holding midfielder since he started against. I mean, he's played, of course he has, but he's not been a person that we've been putting our house on really for a year or two, but particularly since a Wolves game where the Wolves game at home, sorry, in December when we won in the last minute. He's too pedestrian now, and especially in a European game where we need to be keeping the ball and we need to be also moving it at times quite quickly. As much as we know McFred have their I'm going to say McTominay and Fred just to elaborate. As much as we know that they have their weaknesses, again, for me, it's a no-brainer. Some United fans will disagree. Some United fans will say, "Let's go for it. Let's play one of McTominay or Fred tomorrow." But me personally, I think I would play both. Bruno, of course, kind of in between the sort of those two and then the attack. Cavani leads the line, and I'm mentioning it in this order because I think obviously Bruno and Cavani again are fairly certain starters for both Ollie, myself, but also 90% of the United fan base out there. I think the questions then obviously come involved in the rest of the team. Pogba obviously starts. I would play him in that position that he's been playing in the last few months on the sort of left-hand side of midfield, kind of as a unorthodox, if you like, left front guy. Um, some United fans probably would play him in the centre of the park or even alongside McTominay or Fred in front of the back four. But I would go with Pogba and then Rashford starts on the other side. So the biggest omission, if you like, from my
Yes.
lineup and also I think from Ollie's lineup will be Greenwood.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the one player I suspect. I mean, it's 50-50 to Anzabi Bayi, but in terms of the makeup of the team, in terms of the fan base, in terms of what I would do, etc., and Ollie as well, that's the question really. Does he start with Greenwood on the right, potentially Rashford on the left, and Cavani up front, or potentially Greenwood as the striker or Rashford as a striker and Cavani on the bench, and blah blah blah, and all those different permutations, could be here a while explaining them. But I would leave I would leave Greenwood on the bench, and I would start Rashford on the right. Rashford actually has come into that role. About 6 months ago, I was very uncomfortable with Rashford playing on the right, but now he's provided a few assists from there. He's still a top player. I think he's had moments this season when he's been out of form, but his form in the last few months has been pretty good. I've seen some people putting him in their sort of Premier League teams of the season, Rashford. I think that's quite generous. I've
Yeah.
watched him, week in, week out this season, and he hasn't constantly performed in the same way that other players in those positions have throughout the league. But nevertheless, again, he's now experienced. I mean, he's been on the scene for 6 years since he broke onto the scene in the Europa League as
Yeah.
well in 2015 under Van Gaal. So, or 2016, sorry, so 5 years. And then, of course, he was in the Euro squad and he's in England, regular in terms of the squad now. So for me, he starts and I also think Greenwood's impact off the bench could be amazing. I also think finally on this sort of makeup of the team as well as the personnel, I think you win midfield, you win a football match. You win that area of the pitch, and you're winning more football matches than you lose, and especially in finals, I think. So with McTominay and Fred and Pogba as well, all starting, as well as Bruno, if you like, in terms of keeping the ball, I think that puts us in a pretty strong and solid position. Yes, the more ambitious, if we go behind or we're behind with 30 minutes to go, absolutely, you bring on Greenwood and you probably take off one of McTominay or Fred and you're going forward and so on and so forth. And I think Greenwood is a great option from the bench. And by the way, I think Greenwood is the future as well. I think Greenwood in 1 or 2 years, you probably wouldn't dream of leaving him out your starting lineup. But we're talking about tomorrow, and I would have Greenwood on the bench as an option as and when we need it. Um, I guess the other alternative as well, would be Cavani on the bench, but I think he's played too
No,
well
I
in
think John,
recent
you're right
weeks.
that I think if I'm being honest with Maguire out, I think Greenwood and I think Cavani and Bruno Fernandes are the first two names that go into the team sheet, and
Mm-hmm.
I think Cavani also brings that experience, right? He's got the experience of playing on the biggest stages,
there is another thing. Sorry to interrupt, but there is another thing to add. Cavani also just gives us something defending set pieces too.
Mhm.
You know, actually, I've seen him. You know, I saw him do it. It was unorthodox, but Eric Bailly, perhaps. But I saw him unbelievable defensive clearance that he just managed to get a head on against Spurs when we were 2-1 up a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, or a few weeks ago. And okay, it came off our own post, but actually it was a vital intervention. And I have seen a couple of other times where, and I think he would just give us that. Given the missing of Maguire, I think at defending set pieces, he's slightly better than Greenwood as well.
And he's
So
also sort of, I think he's also better at pressing than Mason. Not necessarily
okay,
has the legs as Mason does, obviously, but I think he's very smart when it comes to his pressing, and he's sort of always keeping the defenders busy. So he almost takes two centre backs out of the equation when he starts up front. So my only sort of, I think the only debate I think that Ollie might be making in his head is whether to start the infamous or the famous McFred combination, or to start one of the duo and play Paul Pogba in midfield.
what would you do? So you sort of know my team now
I
with
think
Pogba up front, sort of thing. What would you do?
I'm a little bit torn here because I feel like if you start Pogba, Mason, Cavani, Bruno, and Rashford, all four of them, that gives us a lot of ammunition going forward. And had Maguire been fit, I think I would have gone for this combination. But without Maguire, I think we're going to need that extra defensive protection, and we'll have to go with McFred. And of course, Paul Pogba has to play. He's possibly, I mean, he is our biggest sort of big game player. He's won the World Cup. You can't
And
top
he's
that.
probably been one of our best three performers this season, I would say, along with Bruno and
Maybe fourth, I'd say. I'd
okay,
say
Bruno,
Maguire, Shaw,
Maguire,
Pogba.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think I'd go with that defense. I'd put Tuanzebe in there, and then the rest of the team. I'd definitely play Rashford of the right, Pogba of the left, Cavani up top. I don't think Marcus. I mean, I feel if you look at the Liverpool game, Rashford played through the right the entire game. 10 minutes he played on the left and had two clear goal scoring opportunities. So I do think
Mm-hmm.
he's his most productive at the left. But you have to play Paul Pogba, and since Maguire's not there, you have to play McFred. So I think what you said is absolutely correct. And then of course Mason gives you that option is to, if Cavani is not having a great game, you can put him in there. If you're down, you can take out Fred or McTominay and put him in there. So I think
Yeah.
with the likes of Mason being on the bench, it adds that extra sort of edge as well. And not to
Yeah.
forget, Dan James is also sort of fit and ready to go. His pace could be something we might need in the later stages of the game if it's a deadlock or if we're 1-0 down. Because the way I look at this game panning out is us having a lot of the ball and Villarreal doing a lot of chasing. And
Mm-hmm.
if the defenders have tired legs, Villarreal defenders have tired legs, I think Dan James could be someone who might come off the bench and have a telling moment as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this is sort of the combination. And the way the game will pan out. I think. What is your view of the game? Do you think Villarreal will come out and put up a high press, or do you think they're just going to have a low block and we're going to have to break them down bit by bit?
I mean, listen, under when he was at Arsenal, Emery, and I also followed him a bit when he was coach of Seville. In fact, I was living in Seville during many of the years that he was there. In fact, maybe his entire time in Seville, I was there. I was there between 2013 and 2016 when they won many of those Europa leagues. And he was trying to introduce at Arsenal a high press. He also was, going with what most coaches are doing now in terms of playing out from the back, and that includes the goalkeeper. He was trying to introduce that at Arsenal to not great effect, it has to be said. But he does seem to have a very good impact on these clubs in that sort of higher tier in Spain, albeit maybe not the absolute top echelons in terms of Sevilla and Villarreal and etc. So, um, he's a good coach, and I think possibly part of the problem he had when he was coach at Arsenal was communication, his level of English, etc. I think sometimes in press conferences we saw it, and I don't know if that had any, impact on the team. It can't have helped compared to some of these other foreign coaches that come in, and we see how good their English is, whether it be Klopp or whether it be Solskjaer, of course, etc. We know. So, in terms of the game, a bit like you, I suspect we will have more of the ball, and that again would suggest for me having another body, if you like, or another midfielder, as you like, a classic sort of midfielder who's comfortable in the central spaces. I think that is more useful rather than, say, three quick attackers that you might want to have in a counter-attacking lineup.
Mm.
if you're going to have a bit more of the ball, as I expect us to do tomorrow, you would like to sort of have a few more people in there that are comfortable on the ball in various spaces and also tight spaces sometimes. So
Right.
therefore, again, that to me says play Pogba, play McFred, play Bruno, and then have Cavani up front with Rashford on the right. How do I see it going in general? In terms of the game, I mean, I've already expressed my optimism. Um, maybe I'm too optimistic. As I say, I might not be quite so optimistic a minute before kickoff tomorrow, because then you start to worry about all sorts of permutations, and you see Bailly sort of trip over as he walks onto the pitch, and you're thinking, oh goodness me. But no, I am optimistic. I think we should have too much for Villarreal tomorrow. Um, so, they've got some old heads. They've got Carlos Bacca, who was obviously also at Sevilla under Emery as well.
Yeah.
He's somebody that's going to have to be kept an eye on. He's a decent, Latin American forward who's probably not, again, a bit like Villarreal, a bit like Emery in a way. Bacca is the embodiment of that. Is that he just couldn't quite make that step up. I mean, I think he went to Milan for a year or two
Mhm.
and didn't really pull up any trees there. So in a way, he's a bit like, and really, if you're going to be winning, trophies, Europa League, for example, you're going to have to deal with probably more difficult strikers than Carlos Bacca. Now he could score tomorrow. Don't get me wrong, but I also remember Baku actually under Emery and playing for Sevilla a few years ago, and they did win that particular year. I think it was 2015. So 2016 they beat Liverpool, Sevilla, and in 2015 they won on penalties against somebody, maybe Benfica, but and they
Benfica,
were
yeah.
outclassed in that match, Sevilla were, but they won on penalties. And
Mm.
Baku actually did have one or two chances during the game, and he didn't really take them. He sort of miscontrolled, so he seemed a bit nervous then. And like I say, I just think that the top level has always eluded him. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean he can't score tomorrow, and we don't need to pay attention. But anyway,
They've
they've
also
got
got,
some
sorry,
other players
John,
and
they've
stuff.
also got a couple of interesting players, I mean, experienced players, and of course, Etienne Capoue is there, Coquelin is there,
Yeah.
and I think Lorenzo is there as well, and they've got Mario Gaspar in defense as well. So they do have some experience going into this game. It's not just that they're putting out a team of young kids who are going to try to, upset us, which was the case when we played this competition's final the last time. So they
Yeah.
do have experienced heads there, and they also have that. But I think the biggest problem they're going to face is they're missing Chiquiza. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's been their best player all season, and they're missing him. So that
Yeah.
could play a big role in how sort of this game goes. Having said that, we have, I think, almost 7 or 8 players who won this who will start tomorrow, won this competition the last time. We've
Mhm.
got that going for us, and then we've got a manager who knows something about doing something special on a European night. So how how sort of in terms of, we've spoken about the tactics and all of that. In terms of the emotional side of the game, we've lost so many semi-finals. We've lost crucial games in the Premier League as well last
Mhm.
season. Even this season, we may have not come out with the results that we wanted to. So how do you think emotionally or mentally equipped, how well mentally or emotionally equipped are this manager and team ready to handle this kind of situation? Do you, how important will that play out?
I think it is important, extremely important, and in a way, with the exception of the Maguire absence or potential absence, it's probably the biggest question mark. We don't really know. Yes, okay, Bay and De Gea and some of the other players, Pogba, of course, were also, a part of that team that won in
Luke
2017.
Shaw,
Luke Shaw as
Eriksen.
well. Did he start that game against Ajax in 2017?
I cannot remember. I cannot recall.
No, but he was certainly part of the squad.
He
Yeah,
was
I mean,
definitely
you're
part.
right. You're right. Seven or eight of them part of the squad. However, there's been 4 years of not winning a trophy since then, and that can play its role. And we know all about the sort of 4 or 5 semi-finals that we've had since then. So this is the first time we've got over that hurdle. But honestly, we don't know. We don't know what's Wan-Bissaka going to be like in a big European final. Tuanzebe, if he does start, what's he going to be like in a big European final? McTominay, I think will probably be okay. I don't know. I feel as though he's somebody who can take responsibility, and that's sometimes That's part of it. Okay, controlling the nerves, but controlling the nerves also means being happy to receive the ball, happy to receive the ball in tight spaces, putting your hand up. And I think he's done that with Scotland in particular on a few occasions when they've needed him. So I'm okay with him. But yeah, there are doubts. And in terms of the collective, we don't know. We just don't know. And Solskjaer as well as a manager, we don't know. In terms of, if this is his first final at United, it's one of the question marks. But there'll be question marks about, Villarreal to some extent. And you mentioned some of those players, and I don't know if Baka will start tomorrow, but we've already spoken about him. But you also mentioned Coquelin as well, but these are not players that
No,
you know are really
no.
should hold too many fears for us. Albiol in the defense, if he was a top defender, but probably 5 years ago more than today. Um, so yeah, Alcacer and stuff. I shouldn't. We shouldn't. If we lose, then okay, so be it. But in terms of the man for man and the
Uh,
players, we should be winning this. And you mentioned about the older guys that Villarreal have, and comparing it to Ajax is a great comparison but that Ajax team, of course, within 2 years, were in a Champions League semi-final and really should have been in the final in 2019. So
yeah.
that was a really good team in the making. I don't know if I see the same thing in Villarreal.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree with you. I think man for man, pound for pound, the way you want to look at it, I think we should be sort of out punching them, out boxing them. They're not in the same weight class as we are. But this is the final, and as Manchester United fans, in a sense, we know anything can happen. And we've been on the sort of good end of the stick and the bad end of it often enough to know that anything can happen. And this is what I want to ask you, John. Everyone's talking about Ollie winning a trophy, his first trophy, and how important it is. I don't want to ask you that. We all know that it's very important, etc., etc. What I want to ask you is this: as someone who's witnessed sort of Ollie and his magic as a player, how much would it mean to you for him to lift a trophy now as a manager for Manchester United?
Wow, that's a great thought and a great question. Yeah, I think it will mean a lot. I think it will mean a lot for the fan base to see that happen, and it will secure any kind of legacy, if you like, that he can have as a manager. I mean, his legacy as a player is unquestioned, of course, but as a manager, it will give him something and it will give the fans something. I mean, he's already given us plenty. He's already brought on one or two young players. He's already taken one or two of those young players on, such as Rashford, for example. I think his transfer record has been pretty good, which is something, when we look at certain managers in the past, hasn't always been the case. I mean, we remember that summer with Van Gaal and oh my goodness me. I mean, pretty much every purchase that particular summer of 2015, I think it was, just failed and failed monumentally and was
Monumental.
200 million quid down the drain.
Yeah.
So, I'm talking about the Di Maria and the Schneidel and the Schweinsteiger purchases of that particular summer. And who was the fullback from Italy as well that we got?
Damian, I think.
Damian, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and then you compare it to his purchases. Most of them have been successes, or at least potential successes. Dan James is a potential success. I would say we will need to probably still wait another year or two on that one. But you look at Maguire and Wan-Bissaka, I think has had one or two bad games recently, but has largely been a success in the 2 years since he's been at the club. Um, so yeah, and Bruno, of course. I mean, we don't even need to talk about that one any more than that. So he's been pretty good in the transfer market, and he's brought some players on, and he's taken us to a new level, no doubt about that. But to see him lift a trophy, uh, it would be great if it was the Premier League, but not to be this season. But the Europa League would be a great, and I'm telling you now, there will be thousands of fans in the stadium tomorrow, which is great, and there'll be millions of us around the world that'll be just really, really, really pleased for Ole being able to lift that trophy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, a lot of fans, including me, yet have sort of reservations about Oli and whether, he can actually win us the Premier League or not. But I think nobody would be, I think every single Manchester United fan will be ecstatic if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wins something because after all, he's sort of one of us. And we've all seen him do so phenomenally well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Jose Mourinho won us the, let's not call it the double, but he won us two trophies in a
Mm-hmm.
year. Van Gaal won us the FA Cup. All of those things were beautiful, magical, etc. But if Ollie wins it, I think it's going to sort of hold a special place in everyone's hearts, because
Yeah.
he is literally one of us. And you could see that, especially in his initial days as manager, it was almost like he was a fan talking to the other fans. And I think
Yeah.
he's learned sort of a few tricks and a few different sort of tactical things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think winning this trophy would be a great sort of culmination of those things as well,
Mm-hmm.
because he
Mm-hmm.
has massively improved, like you said. I think, like Luke Shaw, Marcus Rashford, his trajectory has always been uply elevating himself, and I think
I
that's
think you make,
brilliant.
yeah, I agree. And I think you also make a point about learning and getting better. I think it's something that I probably didn't grasp, in my younger days watching football, and I think some fans still don't. That we kind of look at coaches in a different way to players. We see players evolve and get better or get worse or whatever. We don't really see coaches in the same way. We just see coaches as being here or not being here, and we don't think, hang on a second, maybe Brendan Rodgers, for example, learned and got better. And maybe okay, Brendan Rodgers was here when he was at Liverpool, but maybe he's got better and he's learned. And I think Solskjaer's an example of that. I think it was some of the emotive press conferences he gave in the first few weeks when he was at the club and the references to the past, etc. And that was great, but that could only take us so far. And now you don't really hear that rhetoric so often from him, and rightly so. And of course, but you learn things all the time. And I think he's a bright guy. I think he's a better coach now than he was 2 years ago. And of course, 2 years ago, he would have been a good coach and he would have learned things from his time at Mulder as well before and so on. And even during the unsuccessful period he had at Cardiff, he would have learned from that and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot to be said for actually reevaluating constantly coaches, and who's to say that you can't go up and get better or go down. But sometimes I think fans, and I include myself in that in the past, we sort of think, okay, success or not success, and you that doesn't change. This guy will always be this level of manager. Well, actually, you can kind of get promoted if you like, or even
John,
get
this is a very
relegated, as we say.
interesting thing that you're saying, and I feel like it's all about patience. I think, me included, we want trophies immediately. Like, I mean, for example, you look at someone even of the stature of Jose Mourinho. He goes into Spurs, and the expectation is that he's going to deliver Spurs a trophy that they haven't won in what, 21 years, 22 years, whatever it is now. And the expectation is that he's going to win them a trophy straight away. Now, even if, imagine if that is not the expectation. Imagine the expectation is you're going to win a trophy in 2 seasons, where in the first season you're not actually competing for anything. I think that could actually give you time to build a team, but obviously we're not in that business, and we don't sort of give managers time. I think Sir Alex Ferguson in today's era would not have got the chance to build the legacy that he did, because we are so quick to fire managers, we're so quick to hire new ones, and that sort of stunts their progress as well as the club's progress, in my view. But again, that's an entire other video we could do for a couple of hours. What I want to ask you this is, John, what is going to be the scoreline tomorrow?
Oh, I really don't like giving short. I mean, I'm going to give you an answer. Don't worry. And I do make predictions, but I much prefer long term predictions rather than short term ones. I'm equally unsuccessful at those, but I still feel more comfortable giving them. But regarding tomorrow, I think we'll win. I'll say 2-1. I was thinking 2-0. But I'm just not so sure about that back line. I mean, even with Maguire, I think there have been moments this season where it's not always been super secure.
Yeah.
I think that we spoke about transfers, a few days or last week when we spoke, but and that is an area of the team that some people have considered. I'm slightly more interested in the holding midfielder role than the centre half role, if you like. But again, that's also a debate for another time. But yeah, I'm going to say 2-1 tomorrow. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet. I hope that De Gea can have a good game. I hope he's not responsible for a goal, given that it could be his last game. As I say, I hope it won't be, but it could be. And so yeah, I think we've got enough attacking options to score the goals that we'll need to win, and therefore yeah. I mean, actually, I was listening just before I came on air. I was listening to a Spanish podcast, and they had a couple of. There was a Manchester United orientated podcast, if you like, but they had a couple of Villarreal fans on there.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, those guys are actually feeling similar emotions to the United fans, but from a very different perspective. I think most of us are feeling quite comfortable, United fans, or right now, but we might get a bit more nervous as we get towards the game. But the Villarreal fans, as being the underdogs, are feeling either comfortable because they think they're going to lose, or they're very worried about Rashford, about Cavani, about Bruno Fernandes. So we've got plenty to give them to worry about, and I hope and I think we'll win tomorrow.
I'm gonna go 3-1 to Manchester United. I was gonna say 4-1, but that might be a little too
Woo!
confident. I think 3-1, and I think we're gonna stamp our authority on this game. We might concede first, as we often do, but I think this is going to be a game where we dominate, and I think Bruno Fernandes is going to be sort of the one who's going to control this game. I think he's given about 30 interviews about how he wants to win a trophy. It's about time to do that when he has the chance. And I think he will. He's the kind of player who will step up. So for me,
Yeah,
3-1, Bruno Fernandes. Hopefully, David De Gea makes a couple of good saves. If it is sadly indeed his last game, then
big if we don't
yeah,
know
big
that.
if.
Yeah,
Like, hopefully it isn't. But if it is, then hopefully he has a couple of moments in the sun, so to speak. And yeah, I think Manchester United 3-1. John thinks 2-1, a trophy for Ollie and the boys, and then we move on to next season from there. So, John, thank you for coming on. You've been wonderful as always. Do check out John's book, Even the Defeats. We have done a video with him where he's talking about it. Kind enough to read out a passage from it as well. Do check the video out. Do read the book. Do follow John on Twitter. The links are in the description. We'll see you hopefully once we've won the final. And thanks for watching. Bye bye.